Welcome back. This is probably the nicest hard talk that you've done, huh, Tim?
Absolutely, without question, without question.
Tim Sebastian joins me on Off the Record. He's the chairman of the Doha debates, but we all know him from the BBC's Hard Talk, and that's what we were talking about before we took a break. And I was going to ask Tim whether it is possible to do a show like Hard Talk where you can just push people to the corner and ask them any manner of questions that you like, because you're with a company like the BBC where there's no government interference. A smaller media house can't do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the BBC is a great advocate, a great symbol to stand behind you, and it opens a lot of doors which otherwise wouldn't get open. As I said before, it didn't open a door to Tony Blair being Prime Minister at that time, but that's another issue. But yes, it was good to have them behind you, and I'm sure it was intimidating to some people to walk into these grand BBC studios and sit down and have a very tough interview, yeah. But these were people who had positions of responsibility, who needed to be asked the questions and who needed to be persuaded to give the people answers.
But you know, when I used to watch the show, Tim, I always thought that you went for people's throats. I felt you didn't give them enough space. Sometimes you would just jump and I would think, oh my God, I don't want to ever be in that seat. So was it a ploy to cast them in an unfavorable or a negative light and see how they extricate themselves from the situation? No,
I think there's always a battle for control of an interview, and it takes place normally in the first minute or 2 minutes. And if you don't establish control of that interview, particularly with a very skilled politician, he's going to run rings around you for the rest of the interview. He's very well prepared. He knows exactly, never mind your questions, he knows exactly what points he wants to make during that interview. So you have to get in first and establish some control, and establish the fact that you're going to lead this interview where you want to go and not where he wants it to go.
And Tim just revealed to me that he is also a mortal, because he said that when he'd walk in to do the interviews, you'd be nervous. And I find that so hard to believe, because you always seemed so in control of the situation. So have you ever been
I was the nervous little boy in class at school. I couldn't even read in class. I couldn't even act in school plays and things like that. I was far too nervous to do that. God knows why I went into a job like this.
But have
which
you
has been misery for years.
Have you been put in a spot by anyone?
I was put in a spot. I was put in a spot by a man who had a position of great responsibility in the United Nations. He was responsible for displaced people, mainly in Africa. And I was doing my usual thing of saying, well, the UN has failed here, here, and here. And at one point in the interview, he said, wait a minute, just stop there. And I thought, oh my goodness, what's coming now? And he said, look, I can't save millions of people. He said, but I'll tell you what I do. He said, I have a small plane. And when I can, I fly it into a war zone, whether it's in Africa or in Asia or wherever it is, and I put as many women and children as I can in the back of that plane, and I fly them out of the war zone, and I land them somewhere safe. And he looked at me across the table and he said, so how many lives have you saved?
And what do you do in a situation like that?
I put out my hands and I said, good question. Thank you. Actually, I think that's the best question that's been asked on Hard Talk. And it was by an interviewee, not by the interviewer. So, yeah, it makes you think. It brings you up short. And that's good. That's really, really good.
35 years with the BBC, it's a really long time.
Yeah, I'm only 25 years old as well. That's different. You were born the year I left college.
And we went to the same college, Cardiff.
I know, this is shattering to me. I haven't really recovered from this news.
So,
I'm weak, so don't hit me too hard.
No, I'll be kind. I won't be like you, Tim. Tell me, 35 years with the BBC, a public service broadcaster, where there's no government interference, where you have so much freedom. Do you think that would be the ideal thing for every country in the world to have?
It was wonderful, never to be told by anybody in the course of those years what I could or couldn't say, what questions I could or couldn't ask, who I could or couldn't interview. No, it was tremendous freedom. And when I go around the world, and particularly in the Arab world, where there's no real freedom of the press, people are amazed. But I take my hat off to people who live in very difficult conditions where the press is subject to daily repression, who risk their lives and their liberty simply to bring the truth to people. And they do a fantastic job, and they pay sometimes a fantastically high price for it. And their families pay a high price for it. And this is going on now, as we speak, in various parts of the world. People are really suffering under repression, under repressive governments who are trying to still, never mind the fact that we have space-age communications in our hands, they're still trying to stamp out free speech.
So do you see an activist in you? Do you think you're an activist? Because
I'm an
asking
angry
you,
old man. I mean, whether that's an
who
activist or
bullies
not.
his children, by the way.
I'm bullied by my children. I told you I'd learned to follow simple instructions.
So what do you do?
That's been my career development.
I must ask you, what do you do when you're not preparing for the debates? Now that you're no longer with the BBCs, you go to Qatar to do the debates. But what else do you do in London?
Well, I like to go home, find out what my children are doing, and tell them to stop it. And no, I mean, spend time with them. Go to movies a lot. I love movies. Go for long walks in the park. So you know, London is full of parks. It's a great place to walk. And I spend too much time on planes, so it's really nice to have a chance to walk, to run, to exercise. I enjoy that.
You've written 8 books. Are you
A long
planning
time ago. A long time ago.
But are you going to write any more?
I'm trying to write another one. Yes.
Based on the debates, or just
No. Based on the Middle East, though. Actually, based on the Middle East. It's fiction, but hopefully it's going to include a lot of the stories I've never been able to tell as fact.
So
There's a lot that goes on in the Arab world that's out of sight. A lot of mystery, a lot of intrigue, a lot of backbiting. I want to reflect some of that in the novel.
Tim Sebastian, a great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Really, thank you
I've
very
really
much.
enjoyed it. Thank you.